From choir to debate to theater, SDPB shines a spotlight on South Dakota's talented students through SDHSAA All-State Fine Arts programming. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. Every day, SDPB connects South Dakotans with stories that inform, inspire, and bring us together. SDPB, good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB is your home for fact-based journalism, connecting South Dakotans with news they can trust and stories that matter. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB.
Good morning and welcome to Senate Commerce and Energy. I would ask everyone to please take a seat and have your phones turned to silent. If you plan on testifying today, please sign in at sdlegislature.gov. Press the people icon or link next to the agenda and fill out the form. Or you can do this directly on your phone by scanning the QR code on the agenda above the podium. At this time, I'd ask the Secretary to please call the roll.
Senators Melhoff,
Here.
Dybert,
Good morning.
Hone, excused Carr, excused Kobeck.
Here.
Larson, excused Perry,
Here.
Peterson, excused Crabtree.
Here.
We have a quorum, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. I would entertain a motion to approve the minutes of our last meeting.
So move.
Moved by
Second.
Colbeck, seconded by Dybert. All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. Minutes are approved. A reminder, testifiers, please make sure you sign in at the back of the room. If you don't know how to do it quite yet, the guys in the yellow shirts will help you. And a reminder for testifiers that any handouts are to be passed out by those pages. And lastly, just one more reminder for you that all testimony and all questions are to be addressed through the chair. At this time, I'd welcome up what looks like an all-star crew of Senate pages to introduce yourself. Tell us what your future plans are and your best clean joke.
Good morning. I'm Ryler Stivix. I'm a senior at Gregory High School. Next year, I plan to attend Mitchell Tech to do the Build Dakota Scholarship for Construction and Architect. And I'm going to leave the joke up to Will.
Well played.
My name is Will. I'm from Lemon. After high school, I plan on going to the University of South Dakota to study political science, and I plan on going to law school. And I have a knock-knock joke.
Love those. Go
knock,
ahead.
knock.
Who's there?
I eat mop. I eat mop.
I'm talking to your dad after this. All right. With that, you get what you ask for, guys. That was my fault. With that, we'll take the consideration of the bills today. We're going to go in order, and we're going to hold them to 15 minutes for proponent, 15 minutes for opponent each time. First up is an act to require certain applicants that seek a permit from the Public Utilities Commission of the state of South Dakota to prepare and pay for an environmental impact statement. House Bill 1173 will take proponent testimony at this time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, John Hughes, State Representative from District 13 and House Prime sponsor of 1173. This bill I actually brought last session, and it had an unintended continuing appropriation issue, which the ruling on the floor in the House was 2/3. It did receive a majority, but did not receive 46 votes. So I'm bringing this back this year. HB 1173 makes an environmental impact study mandatory rather than discretionary on the part of the Public Utilities Commission as part of the permitting process for a carbon transmission facility permit. The heart of the bill is on page 2, lines 18 to 20. Shall require is the phrase, an environmental impact study for a carbon dioxide transmission facility as that's defined in the statute referenced there. In all other cases, the requirement of an environmental impact study is permissive. Now, why is this legislation important? Well, this requirement will allow the creation of a document that I posted online. It's about 380 some pages, which is an environmental impact study that was done on the Otter Tail to Wilkin carbon dioxide pipeline project in Minnesota. It's a marvelous document. And in addition to the incredible work that the PUC does, for example, Commissioner Nelson prepared and his staff prepared this extensive list of all of what the PUC does on a permitting application for a CO2 pipeline. What this bill does is it's a transparency bill that requires the permitting applicant to produce a narrative report, which then would be available to everyone. And how this arose was from the work I was doing with a law firm in Omaha many, many years ago. I had the good fortune of bumping into my anthropology professor who was doing archaeological assessments for the Northern Natural Gas and InterNorth, and it was amazing. We had dinner several times. He recently retired, I think, from Augustana. And we talked through all of how transmission facilities and pipelines and how they're regulated in Nebraska. And so as I was watching the pipeline controversy unfold, I thought to myself, and I checked, and there was not an environmental impact statement done for the Summit Carbon Pipeline project. And I thought, wow, how helpful that might be. As someone recently told me, you know, when you're not allowed to look under the bed, you assume a monster's under there. And so the concept of an environmental impact study is well established in our existing state statutes. For example, an environmental impact statement has to contain a description of the proposed pipeline in its environmental setting, the environmental impact of the proposed action, including short-term, long-term effects, any adverse environmental effects that can be avoided if the proposal is implemented, alternatives to the proposed action, mitigation measures proposed to minimize the environmental impact, and the growth, and this is what really triggered my imagination, the growth-inducing aspects of the proposed action. In other words, there's going to be an advocacy for how this pipeline project for CO2 will provide growth. And, you know, what we seem to miss a lot of times is perhaps the idea that let's all share this information. Let's figure out, okay, we now have subject matter experts that are analyzing these questions and providing their expertise in a detailed written report that's filed and part of the docket on the permitting process and becomes part of the applicant's burden of proof, as I discussed with Commissioner Nelson. So, for example, if you go online, you'll see this document. And what's really wonderful about it is this is just a 28.1 mile of 4-inch diameter carbon steel pipeline and associated facilities for the transport of CO2 from the Green Plains ethanol plant in Minnesota, just one plant. And it describes that the capture facility is going to need 38.5 million kilowatt hours per year of power and would require 13 million gallons of water per year. So basically what we're doing here is just providing transparency. And I think on a project of this magnitude, and I think a CO2 pipeline is rather unique. You know, there are still questions out there to be established legally. But it is a transmission facility, but it's not the typical type of transmission facility we're all familiar with. You know, it's not you know, natural gas, it's not oil, and all of us are pretty familiar with that. So we just get one chance when we have projects of this scope and magnitude, and I certainly don't think this conversation's ended. I mean, I fully expect there to be a re-energizing. I mean, the climate change science is not going away, no matter what your stance is on that, one way or the other. And I'm not here to advocate on either side of that. But as I sat in Omaha in my office there with the law firm I was with, we had a well-developed group of lawyers that regularly worked with these issues, and that's why when I came up here, I thought, boy, why wouldn't we do that here? And so this isn't in any way, shape, or form a criticism of the PUC process or how the PUC handles what they do. I appreciated sitting down with Commissioner Nelson and also with Commissioner Fegan. And the process they go through is extraordinary. But what this would require is the permit applicant would be required to obtain and pay for an environmental impact study. And because they would obtain and pay for it, there's no cost or expense. There's no continuing appropriation. we're laying that issue to rest. And so the fiscal impact is zero. And so I didn't bring this because I represent any constituency group. I'm here essentially as a legislator, believing that good public policy includes transparency and shared information. And I think South Dakotans are reasonable people. I think we should all be in favor of providing information. And I hope you'll support the bill. I do hope it is signed into law this year. I do think it's positive, and it makes no judgment. It just ensures the process is transparent. So thank you. I'll be available for questions, Mr.
Thank you,
Chair.
Representative. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1173. Any further proponent testimony? Last call for proponent. There we go.
Good morning, Mr. Chair and committee members. Melissa McCauley, registered lobbyist for Dakota Rural Action. I want to say thank you to Representative Hughes and the commissioners for working together on this bill. Dakota Rural Action rises in support of House Bill 1173 and encourages a yes vote. House Bill 1173 is a common sense piece of legislation that simply requires due diligence for any future CO2 pipeline application. Much of the debate surrounding projects in recent years related to unknown impacts of the project may have on the communities, the land impacted by the project's footprint. It only makes sense to require that as many of those questions be answered in the future. And this bill utilizes the existing framework of the environmental impact statement and the standard of scope and study reporting for those projects. And with that, we do ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1173. Any further proponent testimony? Seeing none, we'll close proponent testimony and move on to opponent testimony. Is there any opponent testimony on House Bill 1173?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Steve Willard. I'm the executive director and lobbyist for the South Dakota Electric Utility Companies the investor owns. And I appreciate very much where the good representative is coming from, and we spent a lot of time with the commission. Have been kind of watching this bill to see if it works itself out, and we're not convinced that it has. Let me draw your attention to a couple of things. I think Representative Hughes is exactly spot on. All of the action is in Section 2. What I wanted to call your attention to is that Section 2 affects more than just the carbon pipelines. Section 2, now, when it says all other cases, the commission may require an applicant, and that's absolutely permissive, may require, so we're not compelled to go through this process. But this process also affects anything larger than 100 megawatts. So this is large wind, large solar, transmission projects, gas and oil transmission lines. This affects natural gas plants that are being built. So this affects a lot of other things. So as I play this forward, it's like, okay, so if any of the other applicants are going through this process, how does this work going forward? So if that's the case, essentially the applicant's got one of two different avenues to go forward. The first one is right up there in the environmental impact statement must, and it spells out the details. And the representative is exactly right. The requirements of the environmental impact statement are there in statute. But I would call your attention that 34A9 is an unusual statute. That's environmental law over within DANR. And that environmental law is entitled Environmental Impact of Governmental Actions. And it was written, and its intention, and is designed to be, is to put a pause on state projects that are going forward. We've managed to shoehorn a lot of other things into that particular statute, including environmental impact statement. But that statute is not particularly designed for the purposes we're talking about. So accepting the fact that we're just going to lift the definition of environmental impact statement going forward, which was last, from what I can tell, was last changed in 2011. So in that particular case, those are the rules we're working under, or if you have a federal permit in hand. So it's permissive in this case. So now interstate pipelines are most likely going to have a federal permit. So I went back and looked. I said, okay, so accepting that we're going to take NEPA going forward, and we're going to codify the definition of January 26 NEPA in statute, what's changed since the last time NEPA was in statute, because the existing law says that we're going to abide by NEPA as amended January 1, 2009. So I asked the question, what's changed from 2009 to 2026? And I went back and did a looking last night, and the 2023 was the most significant changes to NEPA that have been made in the last 50 years. Now, that was codified in July of 2023. Now, there were a lot of things codified in the tail end of the last administration that I'm not entirely comfortable with. But those are the NEPA changes that were put in there. Now, in defense of this particular action, I don't think they were sea changes. I think a lot of them had to do with the permit. There were a lot of things in there. But the assurances from the federal government that the 23 impact, I wasn't necessarily dissuaded by. So if, in fact, I'm going to do that and play this process forward, then it means that just as you codify building codes, just as you codify other electrical codes, just as you codify other codes into statute, I ask the question whether there's merit to our codifying the 2026 NEPA standard in here. They're still writing guidelines on the 23 NEPA standards. So I'm not sure, even if you were compelled to comply, that you can do it today with January 26 in there. I'm not even sure how you would for those projects that are larger, that require a federal permit. I'm not even sure how you could accomplish that. So that being said, it seems like the only option for the applicants is to go through the state process. And accepting that it's still permissive. I mean, they can still give us a pass on the environmental impact statement. I don't think that's going to be the case in some of these particular cases. I'm not sure that I'm comfortable with the idea of extending that onto the other projects that are involved. And I'm not sure doing this for carbon really, I would say the squeeze is worth the juice. I think carbon is dead. I think at this moment, I don't think the Carbon Summit, I don't think it's coming back. I think that message is sent. I think putting another warning sign on the carbon project grave, I'm not sure really does us much good. And I think it imperils an awful lot of other things. And I think it entangles up the statutes for us. I think it's murky. I'm not sure that we get a lot of value out of doing this. And so I think the consequences are a little bit bigger than that. I love the transparency part of it. I spent a lot of time with the PUC. They do great work. Their staff is phenomenal. And I appreciate where the representative is coming from. I'm not sure that this isn't unnecessary. I'm also not sure that it's a little hasty, that the consequences are significantly larger than what we're suggesting. I'd like to spend a lot more time in those NEPA standards than I think has been done. The other thing, and I'll give you one last thing that just makes me smile. One of my favorite, and I want to read it to you, one of my favorite sections of statute is something that was passed a long, long time ago, and it's called Limitation on Stringency of Certain Rules. It's in 141.3.4. And it says, no rule that has been promulgated pursuant to Title 34A, 45, 46, 46A may be more stringent than any corresponding federal law, rule, or regulation governing an essentially similar subject or issue. So if, in fact, the standard by which we've been drafting administrative rules is driven by the most recent standard that is referenced in this environmental impact statement, which was 2011, it just begs the question to me is whether or not those rules are going to be more stringent than our dropping 2026 NEPA standards in there. And I'm not sure that's an internal conflict that we should try to get past for a reason that really we don't get much out of it. And I wonder if we're trying to fix this plane as we're kind of flying it by. So I think it's a little early. I think it's not necessary. I think that the consequence is larger than we're suggesting, and I think it requires a little deeper dive. So I appreciate that. I'll hang around for questions.
Thank you. We'll take further in-person opponent testimony on House Bill 1173.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. My name is Brett Kennecke. I'm a lawyer from Custer and a registered lobbyist for Clean Grid Alliance. Our members are people who seek to put up energy projects in South Dakota. We got to talk about some differences between South Dakota law and Nebraska law at the outset here. South Dakota has statewide permitting required for projects of this sort. Nebraska does not. They don't have a statewide process. They don't have a single process like we do in this chapter in order to grant a permit to a project. They have individual county permitting level for almost everything of this sort. So they're significantly different from us at the outset. What we have is a process that you'd see if 4941B was replicated in its entirety here that is transparent. The applicant files an application which runs hundreds or thousands of pages on day one. On day one, that gets filed and it gets sent out to the counties and gets sent out across the state. Notice of that filing is sent out to affected persons, and people can participate in that process as interveners. In fact, we have what I call my dead dog Cosmo rule. I think the commission would let my dead dog Cosmo be a part of a citing docket on this. That's transparency. Those people get to then offer their own evidence in a contested case hearing in front of the Public Utilities Commission, and they get to ask other people questions about what they've said about the application and its contents. That's transparency. What's not transparency is hiring some out-of-state company to put together a report that then doesn't even get filed with the Public Utilities Commission until after that evidentiary hearing has been concluded. The commission schedules evidentiary hearings about 60 days before the statutory deadline so that you have time to have that trial up here in this building with a court reporter and sworn witnesses. And then they take the time to decipher the evidence that's been put in front of them, decide if they're going to grant a permit, and then issue the required documentation, which runs again to hundreds or thousands of pages. That's a process that's real transparency and allows for people to participate. In this case, nobody's going to get to ask questions or even put to use the environmental impact statement that's going to be required. It's useless, and so you've misled people. What does it then mean? Is it evidence? No, it's too late for that. Nobody can be asked questions about it at the hearing because the hearing's already been held. This isn't helpful in any way, shape, or form, and in fact is misleading to people. I'd ask you to put this bill on the table this morning. Thank you.
Thank you. Further in-person opponent testimony on House Bill 1173. Any further in-person opponent testimony? Seeing none, we'll go online. Mike Carbo. Can you hear us?
Yep. Can you hear me, Mr.
We got
Chairman?
you. Yep.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. My name is Mike Carbo, and I'm the Midwest Region Director for the American Petroleum Institute. API represents all segments of the oil and natural gas industry, which supports more than 11 million U.S. jobs. Our approximately 600 members produce, process, and distribute the majority of the nation's energy. And in its first 100 years, API has developed more than 800 standards to enhance operational safety, environmental protection, and sustainability across the industry. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss House Bill 1173 with you today. House Bill 1173 requires all applications for carbon dioxide transmission pipeline projects to conduct an environmental impact statement. However, the South Dakota PUC has a discretion to determine whether an EIS is required for other transmission pipeline applications within the state. The bill singles out CO2 transported by a pipeline to a more burdensome and potentially lengthy process compared to other infrastructure projects or energy pipelines. The state should avoid establishing commodity-specific approaches to environmental reviews and should instead maintain a consistent method by allowing environmental assessments for all transportation pipelines. CO2 pipelines are regulated by the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration, an agency within the U.S. Department of Transportation. FSMA's robust regulations address design and safety elements, including pipe material and grade, pipe strength, operating temperature and pressure requirements, as well as the recommended spacing of valves and integrity management of the constructed infrastructure. The industry has proactively published API Recommended Practice 1192, which is a recognized industry engineering consensus standard that provides guidance to the design, construction, operation, and maintenance of CO2 pipelines. There are currently over 500,000 miles of natural gas and liquid transmission pipelines operating in the United States, including CO2 pipelines, many of which have been operating for decades. As the demand of our nation's pipeline network has increased, the U.S. has set domestic oil production records in 2024. Pipeline safety performance continues to improve. Our industry constructed more than 3,000 additional miles and delivered 15% more barrels of liquids between 2019 and 2023, yet pipeline incidents declined significantly. According to FSMA, both Lakewood pipeline incidents and those impacting people or the environment decreased 13% between 2020 and 2024. In fact, CO2 pipeline incidents declined by over 83% during that same time period. When planning a potential route, pipeline operators seek to avoid highly populated, environmentally sensitive, or culturally significant areas while considering wildlife habitat and water quality protections. State lawmakers should focus on policies that maintain a consistent regulatory framework for pipelines and other critical infrastructure instead of a commodity-specific patchwork. Rather than adding additional red tape for critical infrastructure projects, state lawmakers should foster a business environment conducive to investment and job creation. For those reasons, we urge opposition to House Bill 1173. Thank you for the opportunity to testify today, and I stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any further opponent testimony on House Bill 1173? Seeing none, we'll open it up for rebuttal. Representative Hughes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, let's look at the bill. I'd like to bring us back to reality here, back to the ground, so to speak. If you look at line 19 on page 2, it's only a carbon dioxide transmission facility. That's the clear definition in this bill. There's no reference. There's no conceivable way there could be any other electrical transmission, natural gas transmission, any other pipeline that could be pulled into this process. And so this is a CO2 pipeline bill. It's not, as the opponents say, something that has these unintended impacts. And absolutely, the commission may require an applicant to prepare an environmental impact statement in all other cases. And it has to be submitted and made available at least 30 days prior to the time the commission is to render a decision. So the idea that it's of no force effect, it's too late. My conversations with the PUC, this document would be part of the burden of the permitting applicant. The other thing is that what isn't being mentioned by the opponents is that whenever there's a federal nexus, NEPA, the National Environmental Protection Act, needs to be followed. And that goes back to the early 1970s. And frankly, it has nothing to do with Nebraska law. It really has nothing to do with South Dakota law, because when there is a federal nexus, then there has to be an environmental protection, an environmental impact statement that satisfies the federal government. And that's a whole different process. We're not trying to, change. And I don't understand this date business, January 26 versus, the truth is that the LRC has a rather annoying practice in my world of constantly feeling they need to update references to the code. As a lawyer for 44 years, when laws change, you have to abide by the changes in the laws. You don't get to say, well, we don't have a statute that updates the statute, so you can abide by the 2011 standards. That's just not how the law works. That's a very disingenuous argument, to say the least. So, we're dealing with highly sophisticated global interests that are well able to navigate the law, the regulations, the permitting authorities. This is just a Transparency Protection Act for the people. And again, if you look through this 300 and some page document, I enjoyed reading every page of it. I felt like I understood for the first time what this CO2 pipeline project actually did in its environmental context. And so, the way I look at it, and the fact that I practice with the oldest law firm in Nebraska is a source of pride for me, but it doesn't mean the Nebraska law is on my mind, folks. I've been a lawyer in South Dakota for over 4 decades, so I'm focusing on South Dakota law, not the law of any other states. So, and I also want to state that I didn't receive a single opposition email from any of these parties, and that nobody testified in opposition, as I recall, in House Commerce and Energy. So I view this as sort of a last desperate gasp to try to derail a common sense bill that will provide protections for our people. Thank you.
Move on to committee questions on House Bill 1173. Are there any committee questions on House Bill 1173? Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A few questions for the prime, if I might have some latitude.
Go ahead.
Thank
Representative Hughes.
Thank you. I just have some varied questions based on some of the opponent testimony. So what we heard, that there's a long-standing practice that we've had that rules may not be more stringent than the federal government. But my understanding is rules come under our state law, and our state law can be more stringent than federal law. Am I correct in that thinking?
Go ahead, Representative Hughes.
Mr. Chair, that is the federalist system, where states retain sovereign authority unless there's a specific preemption, which we don't have in this case. There's no federal preemption of state environmental laws. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. Another question.
Go ahead.
The application was referred to when someone files with a PUC, and it's thousands of pages, and it was said that, you know, anybody can look at that and gather information from that, and we already have that transparency. But can you tell me what the difference is between the application that's filed and the environmental impact study, and what's the benefit of the environmental impact study to the average citizen?
Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chair, thank you. Senator, the granular process that's involved in that would likely best be directed to Commissioner Nelson, who is here. But I will say this, and I sat down with Commissioner Nelson. I think we spent about an hour together with he and his staff, and it was really enlightening for me to talk through the detailed process. But the, you know, from a higher elevation viewpoint, the PUC is charged with an incredible amount of detailed work and requests for information and data. And yes, technically that's all available if you know, I don't know how a layperson or someone even with a fair degree of intelligence could actually go through all of that versus an environmental impact statement, which is clear, concise, and designed to be read and digested and understood. It's designed for the public.
Thank you. Just a quick follow-up on that, and then I think one more question. So am I hearing you, and I think I heard you say this before, but just want to clarify that the environmental impact statement is basically an executive summary, and it contains a lot of the same information in the application, but it's much more user-friendly.
Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chair, absolutely. It would be the difference between reading a physics textbook versus reading a book like Newtonian Physics for Dummies. You know, where you go through and you actually, as a layperson, you can understand this document. The nice thing about an environmental impact study is it does have an executive summary, and it takes you very quickly through the process. It's good reading. I frankly found myself looking favorably upon this 28.1 mile leg based on this document instead of, a little paranoia, or again, you know, you can't look under the bed, so you think there's a monster there. So part of this is just transparency in the public interest is really, that's what brought this bill. That was my motivation.
One more question, Mr. Chair.
You bet.
So just tell me if I'm correct. Another opponent said several times we should not do commodity specific. And my thinking is this is not commodity specific because CO2 is not a commodity according to South Dakota law. Is that correct?
Representative, there you go.
Mr. Chair, based upon the South Dakota Supreme Court opinion, the court ruled that it was premature to categorize CO2 as a commodity. I will say, in terms of transparency, other states, and I believe Nebraska, Iowa, and Minnesota, perhaps all three, maybe North Dakota as well, but the opponents would be better able to testify. In other states, the effort to have a CO2 pipeline started out with introducing legislation to define CO2 as a commodity. And I'll relay a lobbyist question I had back in 2024 when I was running for office. I asked him, he's well known to all of you, but I won't mention his name. I said, why didn't Summit and Glacial Lakes just start out with legislation defining CO2 under South Dakota law as a commodity? He said, well, you know why, it'd never pass. And I'm like, okay. So in other words, we just blast forward, and frankly, from my view of this, that's how this pipeline, the genesis of it was all wrong. It started with demanding we're going to do this rather than saying, let's define the terms and let's educate the public. So that is really why I've brought this bill, is to educate the public.
Senator Perry.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to invite Chris Nelson up to ask a question or two, if that would be fine.
Looks like we got a willing bystander here.
It's always good to have a willing bystander that is the chairman of the PUC. But my question is, on the environmental impact statement, is that important? Is that something that you normally ask for? Is that critical to what we're doing here?
Go ahead,
If
Commissioner.
I might, Mr. Chairman.
Just go ahead and introduce yourself too, if you
Thank
could,
you.
Commissioner.
Chris Nelson, Chair of the Public Utilities Commission. The answer to your question, the simple answer is no. The longer answer is that the last time that we required an environmental impact statement for one of our permit proceedings was 1991. We've not requested one since then. So then the obvious question is, why haven't we? And the answer to that is that the permit process that we have is really robust. The application that these folks submit to us for these permits is extensive. And then over the course of the year that we have to process that application, our staff go through the discovery process asking hundreds of data requests from the applicant to learn more about the project. And so we have always felt that we've gotten as much or more information through that process than we would through an environmental impact statement. And I will tell you, just in all fairness, what I've just told you, I've shared with Representative Hughes, and so he's not surprised by anything that I'm telling you.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you for that answer. Just out of curiosity, can you ask for that environmental statement anytime now, or is that something that's new to us?
Go ahead.
If I might, I'm not going to hinge on the word anytime, but does the current statute allow us to ask for it? The answer is yes.
Senator Dibert.
Thank you. If you'd stay seated, please. Couple questions. How many permits are pending right now for carbon dioxide transmission facilities?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
If I might, the answer is 0.
Could you follow up, please? Could you tell me why there's no new applications?
If I might, I'm not sure that I can tell you that. You'd have to talk to the companies that might want to do that type of thing, why they don't have an app in front of us.
Thank you.
Further committee questions. Senator Hone.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. First one's for Commissioner Nelson. Are you an opponent to this bill?
Mr. Chair, no, we did not rise in support or opposition. And in full transparency, when Representative Hughes dropped the initial bill on the House side, we looked at it and it was frankly unworkable for us. And so we worked with him on an amendment that was put on the bill so that if the bill passes, it would be workable for the PUC, but we don't take a position one way or the other because we feel we can do our job adequately with this or without this.
Marked as other. We got it. Go ahead, Senator.
I have a couple more if you give me latitude.
Yep, go ahead,
Another
Senator.
for Commissioner Nelson. So, I've been through a few of your PUC process. You have a staff and all these people that are able to look over all this information. For a layperson like myself, or somebody that is put in a pipeline project unexpectedly, do you not feel that an environmental impact statement would be very helpful to that layperson to try to understand and figure out the project?
Go ahead, Commissioner.
If I might, I'll be honest with you, I've never read through one, so I'm not sure that I can answer that question. What I do know is that, again, we get the information that we need to adequately analyze the projects. And that information, unless it is specifically proprietary, is available publicly on our website to the public. I think the other key thing that's important is that one of I think the opponents made the case that this statement may not even be available at the time of the hearing. And so might it become available after that hearing and be available for the public to look at? That's true, but I'm not sure that it would be available soon enough to be part of the hearing process.
Follow.
Can you tell me, with the CO2 pipeline project, the pipeline hazardous materials and safety administration did not have updated regulations? Are those up to date now?
That's PHMSA, right?
PHMSA.
If I might, yeah, PHMSA, my understanding is those have not been completed.
Okay, I'd like to have one more follow-up with the prime, if I could.
Go ahead. Representative Hughes. Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you, Representative Hughes, for bringing this bill forward. I really feel that this is very important for transparency. And you said that the document that you were referring to for that specific project was 300 and some pages, and it was easy for a layperson or somebody that is not specialized in this area to understand. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Representative.
That is correct, Senator.
Thank you.
Any further committee questions? Senator Colbeck.
Yeah, I have one for Commissioner Nelson.
Go ahead, Senator.
So Keystone XL, natural gas pipelines, crude oil pipelines, all of that, this statute has been adequate for that. All of those require some sort of environmental impact because they go to the federal government. I mean, FERC requires impact statements, PHMSA requires impact statements. All of that is available to your staff, correct?
If I might, Mr. Chairman, certainly any project that has a federal nexus, and I'll give you an example of that. If a transmission line is intersecting with a WAPA facility, which is federal, in those cases, then they're required to do some type of NEPA review, and that is available to us.
Go ahead.
Do you, in your expert opinion, do you know how much an environmental impact statement would cost a company? I mean, we're talking about substantially upping the cost of a project in the state of South Dakota. Would it be in hundreds of thousands?
Commissioner?
If I might, I have no idea.
My last one is, if we look at our current statute and don't change it, you have the ability to ask for an environmental impact statement from a carbon dioxide pipeline, correct?
Go ahead.
If I might, the answer is yes.
Thank you.
Senator Perry. Hit your, go ahead and hit your mic, Senator Perry.
All right, I'm not sure if the question will go to the commissioner, but by adding the environmental statement, impact statement, would that improve protecting landowner property rights, or would everything still stay just as it was?
If I might, Mr. Chairman, I'll just reiterate what I think I've already said, that we feel that we get all of the information through the application and the discovery process that we as a PUC need to adequately evaluate the environmental impacts of a proposed project. And it's by obtaining that information and properly analyzing it and making a decision on that, that we in turn protect landowners and the people of this state.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Can I ask the prime the same question?
Sure. Might be a little out of this.
Mr.
But
Chair,
go ahead.
you understood the question?
If you could, Mr. Chair, if you could repeat it, that would be appreciated, Senator.
The environmental impact statement, if it is, if that's something that we get, would that improve protecting landowner property rights, or would landowner property rights still be okay the way we are?
Go ahead, Representative.
From a strict legal standpoint, the courts determine things like eminent domain and public use and those kinds of things. I guess I would answer that a different way perhaps and say that by passing this bill, you will facilitate and encourage landowner engagement at a different level in a workable communication format that will, I would say, allay fears and better inform landowners of exactly what the project is, what its scope is. I could, certainly, I did put this on file, the entire document, And after you read this document, you will fully understand what this project is in its context, what it's calling for in terms of environmental impact, use of resources, effect on tribal lands, for example. We have a real problem in South Dakota. An environmental impact statement would address tribal interests and tribal concerns, and just a whole host of reasons. It's a high functioning document that is able to be read and understood. And I want to state for the record, I have 100% confidence in our PUC. But that confidence doesn't change my position that this bill will do good.
Last call for questions. Senator Colbeck.
Yeah, I'll ask the prime. Do you know how much environmental, because I consider this duplicative. I mean, this is already done on a federal level. Do you know how much this would cost any more permitting?
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
First, Senator, if there is a federal nexus, then there has to be a study. And that's been the law since the Nixon administration in the early 1970s. I can't imagine that, I mean, all of the data and information is being put into a narrative form. For example, to put this in context, the Summit Carbon Pipeline, according to the Supreme Court opinion, would generate $1.53 billion in Green New Deal tax credits. I view this as perhaps some thousands of dollars, but it's really putting the information that is already being submitted through experts to the PUC, but putting it into a format that the public can digest. And I guess that's the difference. And I don't know if that answers your question, Senator.
Any follow-up, Senator? Yep. All right, we're going to move on to committee discussion and/or action on House Bill 1173. Senator Hone.
I'll move do pass.
Second.
We have a do pass motion made by Senator Hone, a second made by Senator Peterson. Comments on the motion, Senator Hone.
Thank you. Well, I applaud the good representative for bringing this information or bringing this bill forward. As I said, I've been through a couple of these PUC dockets. The amount of information that's provided and for a layperson to be able to understand it is overwhelming. And when you are tasked with that and trying to understand what is coming at you or what you were being asked to be involved with, like for myself and my family with the carbon pipeline, we were trying to understand and even learn what all the ramifications were with a CO2 pipeline. And so, and you're trying to do that in your daily life, like you're raising a family. For me, it was raising my kids. My parents were elderly. This is just transparency. What's the matter with that? These companies have billions of dollars. And, they've been planning this project usually years in advance. And when, for myself, you don't even know about it until about a year before they want to put it through. They've already had this planning process in place for a long time. And so being transparent to the public, I'm all for that. And I'm fully in support of this legislation. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Well, I would echo Senator Hone's comments, and I would also add that it seems that the PUC has the information they need, but my question is, does the average citizen have the information they need? And I think just based on Senator Hone's comments there, they generally don't. And I think that this is something that they should be provided when their land is going to be affected, their livelihood is going to be affected, their family, their legacy. I don't think it's too much to ask. So I would concur with the do pass motion and ask you to vote yes. Thank you.
Senator Dibert.
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chairman, I'd offer a substitute motion to send House Bill 1173 to the 41st day.
Second.
We have a substitute motion to send us to the 41st day made by Dibert, seconded by Melhoff. Comments on the motion, Dibert.
Thank you. We have a process that's in place. It's proven. I don't know why we want to change it, so I support that we send this to the 41st day.
Senator Melhoff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The thing I don't understand is why this singles out a single commodity for a different standard than everything else? I mean, why don't we require it for hydrogen or natural gas or flubber or for whatever else comes down the pike in the future? And also, we have a Public Utilities Commission that is tasked with managing these applications. I think they do a good job, and since I've been in the legislature, what I've always preached is we need to stay in our lane as legislators. We're not the executive branch. And to me, this is over micromanaging the processes at the PUC.
Senator Colbeck.
Yeah, I would just echo those thoughts and support the motion. When we permitted Keystone XL, we had hundreds of hours of testimony talking about crude oil, which, I mean, we could absolutely have a debate on whether carbon dioxide deserves an environmental impact study or crude oil. And I think that's a question in the bill. The law right now, 4941B21, has served us well, and I don't know why we would mess with that. I think that if the PUC determines they need an environmental impact study, they have the ability to do it today.
Further comments on the motion to defer to the 41st day? Any further comments? I would just add that I think, I think it was pretty clear in the questions that we can already do this. And so in a perfect world, for every bill that we would pass in the legislature, we'd remove to. Here's a situation where we're going to try to pass a law, this bill, which we can already do. And the PUC has made that clear that we can require this. We can ask for that should they see that as needed. I would also say, kind of following up on Senator Milhoff's comments, is we're picking out a particular commodity, one that we've made it clear in South Dakota that project is not going forward. And so the opportunities this law ever gets put into place is zero, I would say, for a long, long time. And so I will be supporting the substitute motion to defer to the 41st day. With that, let's have the secretary call the roll.
Senators Milhoff,
Aye.
Dybert,
Aye.
Hone,
No.
Carr, Colbeck,
Aye.
Larson excused, Perry,
Aye.
Peterson,
No.
Crabtree.
Aye.
5 ayes, 3 nays, 1 excused.
Thank you. After receiving a majority of the votes, the motion to defer House Bill 1173 to the 41st day is hereby deemed passed. Next up is a personal privilege for Senator Perry.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Senator Milhoff.
could I have a personal privilege?
You can.
Yes, thank you very much. I have my number one daughter, Mary Donna Francis, sitting next to my very capable intern, Claire Kennecke, over there. And it's always a joy to see them sitting together.
It's kind of the pride of the Peter Govs right there, isn't it, I think? So that was intentionally aimed at you, Representative Mortensen. All right. House Bill 1180, an act to ensure the validity of non-compete agreements in the context of jointly owned business entities. Representative Mortensen.
Good morning again, Senate Commerce Committee. I bring to you House Bill 1180. My name is Will Mortensen. I represent District 24, which you are sitting in this morning. It comprises most of central South Dakota. This bill, like the prior bill that I brought before this committee, makes a small change in partnership and jointly owned entity law that I discovered in the course of my practice. It makes our laws just a bit more free. There is a freedom to contract in this country, which means if two people who are competent, know what they're doing, and in particular, I would say sophisticated parties, if they want to enter into a contract, the law just lets them. We don't try to say that's too much for a hot dog or not enough for this. You have freedom of contract in this country, with a few limited exceptions. And those are marginally contained in Chapter 53-9, if you're looking through the code. One of the areas that it says is that we have a default restriction on non-competes. They call restraints of trade. We also have restrictions on gambling. That's not a type of contract we allow. We don't allow contracts in contemplation of marriage. And then payday lending is another deviation from the freedom of contract. We don't There are certain loan arrangements the law doesn't let you have, but for the most part, we let you contract in any way that you want to. So this one has to do with non-competes or restraints of trade. I want to level set a little bit because a lot of you who've been in the legislature remember that we've made some changes on non-competes. Basically, all of those have been in the employment context. What type of non-competes an employer can put on their employee. This bill is different than that. It has nothing to do with employer-employee. This is if two folks want to get together and, say, start a trash business, at the outset, I think our law ought to allow them to say, if I'm going to buy you out or you're going to buy me out, you can't go start a competing trash business coming out of that. Right now, what our law says is you'd have to dissolve that entity. That's, I believe, in 53-9-10 or 11. Anyway, it's not right in front of me. But if you dissolve the entity, you can have the non-compete. Also, if you're selling the goodwill of the entity, which is kind of like the name and the going concern value and those things, we don't have an explicit authorization to put into a buy-sell agreement for these closely held entities or in like a partnership agreement, LLC operating agreement, corporate bylaws that would allow you, when you're forming this entity, to say, we don't know who's going to buy who out or keep this going, but if one of us buys the other out, you can't go compete with the business we built together. Like I say, this is a pretty small bill. In my opinion, it mostly clarifies and puts this on stable footing. This is something that a lot of people, when they're starting all kinds of businesses around your towns, would like the ability to do. Right now, the statutes say, hey, government knows better. You can't contract on those terms even if you want to. What I'm saying is, if those folks want to, they should be able to include that as a term. No one could make anyone sign on to this in any way. I mean, if you didn't want to have that as a provision, it wouldn't be. This is just if you are putting it into your governing document, or if at the time of sale you want to say, we'll buy you out for that amount, but you can't then come compete with the business that we built together. It's about co-owners. It's about freedom to contract. It is a pretty small bill, but I'd ask for your favorable consideration. Thank you.
Further proponent testimony on House Bill 1180. Any further proponent testimony? I've noticed that. Any opponent testimony on House Bill 1180? Any opponent testimony? Representative Hughes, would you like to be an opponent?
I could.
All right, we're gonna waive rebuttal. We'll move on to committee questions. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. For the prime, who's also the only proponent.
We did have a proponent also step up as an opponent last week, so I guess you could have done
Right.
that. So go ahead, Senator Peterson.
So my question is, this is permissive. This says may, not shall. And so I'm wondering, is it not already possible for them to agree in their governing documents that this is the case?
Go ahead, Representative.
Mr. Chair, again, Will Mortensen, District 24. So if you look in 53-9, the default in this area is you can't put anything in a contract that would be a restraint of trade. And so then there needs to be exceptions of ways that you can. And so right now, again, the only ones that are explicitly authorized in our code would be if you're selling the goodwill of the business or if this partnership or LLC is dissolving. And so right now, you could always call it you're selling goodwill when you're selling, we'll say, a third of the LLC shares. But that's not quite what you're selling. You're selling a third of these shares. And so I think this makes it clear. But right now, the reason I'm bringing it is that I didn't think it was clear enough for people like me who do a lot of partnership agreements or whatever that this be permitted. So I think we need this to give people that freedom.
Thank you.
Further committee questions on House Bill 1180? Any further committee questions? We'll move on to committee discussion and/or action on House Bill 1180. Senator Kolbeck.
Yep, I'll do a do pass on House Bill 1180 since I'm the Senate Prime.
We have a do pass motion made by Senator Kolbeck, a second by Senator Melhoff. Comments on the motion, Senator Kolbeck.
No, I think this is a good bill by the representative. You brought it. We do this all the time. We codify things that exist in business so that there's just no other question about it. So,
Senator Melhoff.
Just happy to support my district mate.
Any further comments on it? Senator Perry.
I think it's a good idea. The only thing is it ensures the validity of non-compete agreements. If you sign a non-compete agreement, the validity is already there. So it's a bill that it's okay, but and I know you're making a point that we need to make sure everybody understands, but if you sign that agreement, you should understand, or you should not get your pen out, because that's what happens if you sign those things. You are committed. But I'm going to go ahead and go ahead with this because of the people that have made the motion, because they are outstanding senators.
Remind me of who made the motions? No, I'm just kidding. The motion was do pass, made by Colbeck, seconded by Melhoff. Would the secretary please call the roll?
Senators Melhoff.
Aye.
Dybert excused. Hone.
Aye.
Carr.
Aye.
Colbeck.
Aye.
Larson excused. Perry.
Aye.
Sue. Peterson. Sorry. Crabtree.
Aye.
7 ayes, 2 excused.
After receiving unanimous number of votes, House Bill 1180 is hereby deemed passed and will be placed on the consent calendar unless there's any committee objections. Seeing none. Next up, House Bill 1238, an act to protect financial institutions taking action to prevent the financial exploitation of consenting senior or vulnerable adults.
Ready? Yes. Mr. Okay. Mr. Chair. Good morning, Mr. Chair. Senator Steve Colbeck, District 2. I come before you, the committee, to support HB 1238. It's another consumer protection bill focused on preventative financial exploitation. Gives financial institutions a practical, time-limited tool to help stop fraud before life savings are lost. The legislation is about protecting South Dakotans who are consenting seniors or vulnerable adults from coercion and scams. As a credit union board member, I've heard of numerous things that have happened, and it's just heart-wrenching to hear how people have been scammed. So you'll remember that we had the ATM cryptocurrency bill. This is in that same vein. So unfortunately, financial exploitation is one of the fastest growing forms of abuse. Examples of common include sweepstakes, lottery fraud, romance scams, government impersonation scams, and misuse of power of attorney. Once funds are withdrawn, wired, they're typically gone forever. Banks are often the first to see these red flags, but current law does not clearly protect them from intervening, and that's what this bill is about. This measure allows banks to temporarily delay or refuse suspicious transactions when exploitation is reasonably suspected. Instances where this may occur are large cash withdrawals, which are called SARs, or suspicious activity reports, wire transfers, change in ownership or beneficiaries, or even questionable power of attorney injunction. This authority is discretionary, not mandatory, and to delay is temporary and time limited. This legislation is important to all South Dakotans, as a brief pause can stop a devastating scam. It strengthens partnerships between banks, families, and law enforcement. It aligns with the national best practices, and most importantly, it protects the life savings of South Dakota citizens. The House rep has done the lion's share, so she will line up, and you'll notice there are the common cast of characters that were here on the last protection bill. So with that, please support HB 1238.
Thank you, Senator. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238. Representative.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Melissa Heerman, representative for District 7. A few years back, my grandpa was called by a bad actor, claiming that his grandson was in danger. They even went as far as playing a sound into the phone that sounded like a young man in distress. They had 3 key ingredients in their plan of financial exploitation. 1, create fear and intimidation. 2, isolate him. 3, ensure that there was a time-sensitive component that would not provide enough time for him to reach out to a trusted advisor or loved one. He was former military, and protecting family was built into his DNA. So he rushed into action and headed for the bank. Fortunately, in Nebraska, where this occurred, they have a law in the books which will allow banks to pause a transaction when the hallmark signs are presented for financial exploitation. The only reason he did not lose everything in his account that day was because the bank was able to step in. They paused the transaction, called a trusted family member, which was my mom, confirmed the grandson was fine, and the whole terrifying experience was a scam. Unfortunately, the story isn't unique. You can't throw a stone without hitting somebody whose family or friend has been impacted by being scammed. Financial exploitation is one of the fastest growing crimes against seniors and vulnerable adults, and the people committing these crimes are sophisticated. They use fear and intimidation, they isolate people from their family and loved ones, and creating these false emergencies and time-sensitive threats allows the victims to feel pressured to act immediately before anyone else can intervene. There's often only one place to pause in that process to help the individual between them getting the phone call and the money leaving their account, and that is at the bank. Right now, these frontline staff may suspect something is wrong, but they do not have the clear authority or protection to pause that transaction. This legislation allows, but does not require, a financial institution to delay or refuse a suspicious transaction when they reasonably believe that exploitation may be happening. It provides liability protection when they act in good faith to protect the customer. This approach is modeled after legislation that passed in Nebraska in 2021. Their experience has been very positive, so much so that this year, when I talked to my colleagues down there and the Nebraska Legal Counsel, they are now looking at strengthening their laws to allow for more protections. Banks have been able to intervene earlier, or banks will have been able to intervene earlier in Nebraska, partner with families and also with law enforcement to stop these losses before entire retirement savings disappear. And that's what we're trying to do here, because once the money leaves the account, it's just too late to intervene. At this time, I'll turn it over to other proponent testimony and stand by for questions.
Thank you, Representative. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238. Further proponent testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Carl Adam. I serve as the president and CEO of the South Dakota Bankers Association, representing over 70 South Dakota member banks doing business across the state, and I'm also a registered lobbyist. Mr. Chair and members of the committee, the SDBA is very supportive of House Bill 1238. House Bill 1238 is a consumer protection bill. At its core, it gives financial institutions a measured, common sense tool to help protect customers, particularly a consenting person, a senior, and vulnerable adults when they are being coerced, manipulated, or deceived into giving their money away. Allow me to clarify the consenting adult provision, as I'm sure many of you are curious of how this applies. The bill allows additional protection from the bank for seniors, 65 and older, and vulnerable adults that may have substantial mental or functional impairment. The goal of the bank is to have all other customers consent for additional protection. However, we know that will likely not be the case. For example, if a customer chooses not to consent in writing, the bank will still act to stop suspected financial exploitation. However, the difference in this is the written consent allows the bank to more confidently involve a trusted contact by the customer as they would with the senior or vulnerable adult. Without the consent, privacy laws can limit how much information the bank may share with third parties. So this legislation does not require consent for your protection. It simply gives customers the option to proactively authorize an additional layer of protection if they so choose. Financial exploitation is real and a growing concern across not only South Dakota but also the country. Banks routinely see customers pressured to withdraw large sums of cash or send funds quickly due to sweepstakes or lottery scams, romance scams involving online relationships, impersonation scams posing as governmental agencies or family members, and coercion by individuals using undue influence or threats. These scams are sophisticated, emotionally manipulative, and often devastating. Once the money leaves the account, it's usually gone forever. Financial institutions are in a unique position. They may notice a sudden request to withdraw or wire funds that is inconsistent with the customer's history. A customer who appears frightened, rushed, or coached. Transactions tied to known scams and fraud patterns. In many cases, the customer genuinely believes the scam is real and resists advice from family or law enforcement. Under current law, banks often face a difficult choice. Either process the transaction and allow the harm to occur, or intervene and risk legal exposure. HB 1238 assists in resolving this dilemma. The bill does not require banks to block transactions or override customers' decisions. Instead, it allows banks to use reasonable discretion to temporarily delay or refuse a transaction when exploitation is reasonably suspected. The pause can be critical. It creates time to ask additional questions, contact a trusted person identified by the customer, coordinate with law enforcement or adult protective services, and allow the customer to reconsider once the pressure is removed. Often a brief delay is all that is needed to stop a scam or fraud in progress. HB 1238 carefully balances this. Any delay is temporary and time limited. Customers retain access to the courts and law enforcement. Banks are not required to act and are not penalized for choosing not to. The bill respects customers' independence while recognizing the reality of coercion and fraud. This is not about denying access to funds. It's about preventing irreversible harm. Liability protection and 1238 are essential. Without them, banks would be discouraged from acting at all. The bill protects banks and its employees, whether they choose to delay a transaction or determine not to, so long as the decision is made in good faith. This ensures that decisions are guided by customer protection and not fear of litigation. House Bill 1238 benefits the broader public by protecting consenting persons, seniors, and vulnerable adults from losing their life savings, reducing reliance on public assistance after financial devastation, supporting cooperation between banks, families, and law enforcement, and aligning South Dakota with the national best practices in fraud prevention. This is a proactive, preventative approach rather than a reactive one. House Bill 1238 gives banks permission, not a mandate, to do what they already strive to do every day, is to protect their customers. It empowers financial institutions to pause when something does not look right, especially when customers are being targeted on these scams. For these reasons, Mr. Chair and members of the committee, the South Dakota Bankers Association respectfully urges the committee to support House Bill 1238. Thank you, and I'll stand by for any questions.
Thank you. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238. Further proponent testimony.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee. Brett Aftal with the Department of Labor and Regulation, Division of Banking. Here also to urge you to support House Bill 1235. Our office regulates the state-chartered banks and state-chartered trust companies covered by this bill. And as was stated before, the objective of this is to protect South Dakota consumers. And I would just reiterate the point that scammers have become exponentially more sophisticated in just the last couple of years. Gone are the days of the poorly worded, grammar challenged emails that institutions would receive from a compromised email accounts. Now there are entire call centers located around the world full of people that work every day like you and I, except their day's work is trying to scam Americans out of their life savings. The FTC, the Federal Trade Commission, provides a report to Congress every year. So in their December 1st report from the end of last year, they're looking, so it's a year in arrears, but in 2024, Americans 60 and up lost $2.4 billion to scams like those described previously. And this was a fourfold increase from 2020. And this large increase is driven largely by losses exceeding $100,000 per victim. And again, these are investment, romance, impersonation scams. I think it's also important to point out in the report and also in the FBI reports that these crimes are very likely underreported due to, I think, a combination of fear, embarrassment, shame. And also, I think in some cases, people, even after it's all done, are not quite sure they believe that they've been scammed. As was also mentioned, Nebraska did pass a law like this in 2021. And I've discussed it with my counterpart, and I would reiterate the point that they've had some significant success stories with scams like this being prevented. And also, they've had no issues from a federal compliance standpoint because, again, we go in and regulate these institutions. There's laws that apply to the disclosure of customer information. So that's something we definitely looked at very closely in this bill. And I think most situations can be resolved in a very short amount of time. I've been working on Senate Bill 98 that this committee passed last month. The kind of scams that are targeting these individuals going to withdraw funds and put them in that case, a crypto kiosk, are fairly obvious to someone not caught up in the moment. So I think most of these can be resolved very quickly. And if a customer of a South Dakota institution does have a concern with something like this, they can always contact our office. We can reach out to the institution and resolve that matter. I would just say to close, there's no silver bullet to protect every consumer from every possible scam out there. They keep evolving every day, but I think this is common sense legislation that takes us a step forward in involving a trusted contact of an individual that's caught up in a moment. And really, again, the goal is to prevent that fraud from happening in the first place, because reporting is done on the back end, but what we're seeing with how these frauds are carried out and how the funds are sent once they're withdrawn is that you can't get that money back after it's been sent. So I would just urge you to pass House Bill 1238, and we'll stand by for questions.
Thank you. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Eric Nelson with AARP South Dakota, Government Relations Director and registered lobbyist. We have nearly 100,000 members across the state advocating for the 50-plus population. Ask you to support House Bill 1238. Would point out to you that financial exploitation of older adults is real, and we feel that this bill is another tool in the toolbox to help combat financial exploitation. You've had a handful of issues related to these types of scenarios this year, and we ask you to support this bill today. You know, we all grew up in South Dakota. We're from South Dakota, and I think we all trust our bankers. Older South Dakotans, particularly, our visit the brick and mortar facilities of banks, interact with their bankers directly more than anyone, and we as an organization have enjoyed working with banks to try to combat some of these issues, and we feel this bill will do the same, and we ask you to support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238.
Good morning, Mr. Chair. My name is Cole Euchre. I'm with Disability Rights South Dakota. I rise in support of this bill, mainly because there wasn't a way to register in support and opposition on a bill. Disability Rights South Dakota, our broad mission is to protect people with disabilities against abuse, neglect, and exploitation. That includes, of course, financial exploitation. And people with disabilities, intellectual and otherwise, are a major target of exploitation, financial exploitation, as the previous testifier has indicated with seniors. We agree and support the intent and the spirit of this bill. Our only concern would be around the bifurcation between a group of individuals who are consenting adults and other people. It would be our concern that perhaps this would be a limitation or frustration of a person with a disability's autonomy and independence and privacy if they were such a bill was to be put into place and a report was made without their consent. However, also recognizing that the danger and the prevalence of this activity is so great and the risks outweigh the benefits. So that's why I continue to support this bill and hope that you do as well. Recognizing that people should also have their privacy regardless of disability status.
Thank you. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. Matt Krogman, representing the Independent Community Bankers of South Dakota. I think the previous proponents laid out the argument very well, and we would just offer our support and would appreciate your support as well. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll take further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. My name is Grace Gill. I'm the Director of State Affairs for the Alzheimer's Association here in South Dakota and their registered lobbyist. Honored this morning to give a quick Me Too on this important bill. For the 16,500 South Dakotans navigating the long goodbye of Alzheimer's, this legislation represents more than just a banking policy. It is a promise of protection. We cannot stop the progression of the disease, but we can stop the financial predators who see cognitive decline as an opportunity. For the people I serve, 1238 makes sense. This bill would allow individuals living with Alzheimer's to proactively work with their financial institution to say, if you see me making a decision that looks like exploitation, I give you permission to protect me. Passing this bill means you are giving financial institutions the tools to help protect their vulnerable clients, while also empowering those living with the disease and their families to ensure that their hard-earned resources aren't lost to a scam. We ask for your support on House Bill 1238. Thank you.
Thank you. Further proponent testimony on House Bill 1238.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. I'm Chad Peterson, a registered lobbyist for Black Hills Federal Credit Union, a non-for-profit financial institution that has over 110,000 customers across the state. Perk of going last is all the smart people say all the things I was going to say. So we just agree that this will help prevent scams and support this. Ask you to. Thanks.
Thank you. Any further in-person proponent testimony on House Bill 1238? Seeing none, we'll go online to Mr. Lamberty. Can you hear us?
Can hear you. Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Ken Lamberty, a registered lobbyist with the Dakota Credit Union Association. Our association is 33 credit unions with over 350,000 members. I want to just echo the sentiment of the past speakers and then just touch on that House Bill 1238 aligns with South Dakota with growing national trend that similar legislation has already been passed in states such as Virginia, Nebraska, West Virginia, New Jersey, and Pennsylvania. And those states recognize the same challenges we are seeing here. Frontline financial staff are often the last line of defense, but without clear authority to pause suspicious transaction, they can't intervene quickly enough to prevent irreversible harm. This bill addresses that gap by allowing financial institutions to temporarily pause transactions when exploitation is reasonably suspected. Credit unions exist to safeguard members' financial health. House Bill 1238 gives us a reasonable, effective tool to protect people when they are most at risk. For those reasons, we respectfully ask for your support. Thank you.
Thank you. Last call for proponent testimony on House Bill 1238. Seeing none, we'll move on to opponent testimony. Is there any opponent testimony on House Bill 1238? Seeing none, we'll waive sponsor rebuttal. Move on to committee questions, discussion, and/or action on House Bill 1238. Senator Peterson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess for the sponsor or possibly for Mr. Adam.
Go ahead, Senator.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. I'm looking at page 4, line 13 and 14, and that section specifies that when this authority expires, and it says it's 30 business days after the date on which the financial institution first acted, but line 13 and 14 say that the financial institution may extend the duration. It doesn't give a specific time frame for that. Is there a reason for that?
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Carl Adams, South Dakota Bankers. Thank you, Senator, for the question. Help me again. I was a little slow on the draw. Page 4.
Page 4, line 13 and 14, related to the extension of the authority of the financial institution.
Mr. Chair, if I may, I'm going to make an attempt at this. I think Director Ofdahl touched on, we're talking about a 30-day window and pausing it. Oftentimes that simple pause is enough to figure these things out relatively quickly. However, there will be instances, I'm sure, because no scam is alike, that they could extenuate and continue into the future. As a former banker, I experienced some of that with ongoing fraud concerns with individuals that were not did not believe that they were being victims of scam. We had law enforcement included. We had Office of the Attorney General Consumer Protection included. So oftentimes, not routinely, but oftentimes they can take a period longer than 30 days. And so in those instances, they may be extended, if that's helpful.
Sure. Just a follow-up. I like the temporary nature of it. Just want to make sure that it's not ongoing. Just make sure that it's temporary. I think that's the intent. I hope that would be the way that would be implemented.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Further committee questions, discussion, and/or action? Senator Hone.
Oh, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm just wondering how, like, do you earmark these accounts if they're a senior adult or a vulnerable adult, or how is that process done?
Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, Senator. To be determined. There will be training that will be imposed by all of the banks, and we will assist with that, putting certain an outline together for them, and also working with our counterparts in other states that have passed this. But yes, there will be some sort of a template, some sort of an accounting from A to Z of their customers, and working with them based upon their age and potential disability.
Thank you. So it's determined by the financial institution then, and not by the customer themselves or the family saying, I have concerns about, like if they had a child or somebody that is not able to make these decisions on their own?
Mr. Chair, it's a good question, Senator. Thank you. So the bill is intended for consenting seniors and vulnerable adults. So the senior and vulnerable adults will automatically be protected based upon the legislation. Consenting will be everybody else. As I mentioned in my testimony, not everybody's going to want to have this additional layer of protection. The bank will still work to protect them from scams. However, by consenting, it gives the customer the authority to say, yes, I want your hands in my business, or no, I choose not to. But that additional layer allows us to then reach out to a spouse, a family member, a trusted contact. So it just gives us that extra level of ability to have that confidence that we're doing it and we're protecting your personal rights.
Further committee questions, discussion, and/or action?
Mr. Chair,
Senator Melhoff.
I would move do pass.
We have a do pass motion made by Melhoff and a second by Dybert. Comments on the motion, Melhoff?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think this is a good common sense bill. Certainly there are a lot of red flags that I suspect bank employees recognize when they see them, but don't feel that they have the ability to actually do anything to prevent these kind of scams from being carried out. So I appreciate the legislation, and I would hope everybody would vote yes.
Senator Perry.
I just want to make sure that we compliment the author of this bill. She's done a great job putting this together, and I think having as many people be a proponent as we've had, we can see that this is the right thing to be doing.
Thank you. Further committee comments on the do pass motion made by Melhoff, seconded by Dybert? Seeing none, will the secretary please call the roll?
Senators Melhoff.
Aye.
Dybert.
Aye.
Hone.
Aye.
Carr.
Aye.
Colbeck.
Aye.
Larson excused. Perry.
Aye.
Peterson. Crabtree.
Aye.
8 ayes, 1 excused.
After receiving a unanimous number of votes, House Bill 1238 is hereby deemed passed. Unless there's any objections by the committee, we will also place that on consent calendar. Seeing none. That concludes today's work. We've got a little bit on Thursday as well. I think we've got an appointment and one more bill to take care of then. So
Chairman,
at this time,
make a move to adjourn.
we've got a motion to adjourn made by Dybert, second by Perry. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. We are adjourned.
When South Dakotans need reliable information, SDPB is there providing updates and coverage that keep our communities safe and connected. Good, useful, and full of wonder. SDPB. SDPB celebrates South Dakota's student athletes with live coverage of SDHSAA state championships, sharing the excitement of hometown heroes. SDPB. Good, useful, and full of wonder.